What's up, guys? It's Shawn Myszka again from Explosive Edge Athletics in Edina, Minnesota, coming in regards to our 7th installment of our quick jump tips video series that we got rolling here. You know, in jump videos number 1 through 6, we talked about things that seem to be pretty intuitively obvious when it comes to emphasizing or improving on if we're trying to increase our jump performance by focusing on little pieces, you know, the fine-tuning things from the ground on up. Things such as your ankles and your knees and your hips and how much velocity you're bringing to your jump, and then up into the core. Today we're going to talk about something that for some reason is so much overlooked, but it's something that can increase our jump performance just as equally as any of those other variables. And that's the influence and the contribution that we receive from the arm action and in obtaining a vigorous arm action during our jump performance. In fact, research shows us that if our arms move synergistically with our lower body during the performance of a vertical jump, that we can increase our jump heights by anywhere from 10 to 20%. Now that's a huge amount by something that seems so simple and again, so intuitively obvious. Now how can it increase it so much? Well, there's a couple different ways. First off, during the yielding or eccentric action where your body is withstanding the force of gravity and it's lowering itself, it can help increase our eccentric velocity if we start to move our arms in a vigorous fashion on the downward motion, and that helps increase the downward force that we produce. On the concentric end, or where we're overcoming in on the takeoff portion, or the push-off portion I should say, we can start our body into motion more explosively and also help to raise our center of mass. And that's earlier on, before we get to the point where our body reaches toe-off. Now, if you remember one of the earlier videos where I talked about increasing your vertical jump, basically comes down to two different factors. The first one being that it all is being determined by how much velocity our center of mass has at the moment of takeoff. That's also determined by how high our center of mass is at the moment our toe takes off. So if our arms, and we don't use our arms, and our arms are only taking us to this point, and we get to toe off, our center of mass is going to be lower because more of our mass is lower in gravity, or in space relation, I guess I should say, to gravity. Now if our arms are going through a vigorous action and that toe off there up here, our center of mass obviously is much higher. So that's a couple different ways just on a logical sense that they can help increase it. Now how do we know if our arms are contributing considerably to our vertical jump performance or not? If you're talking about or thinking about yourself? Well, the easiest way to do it is to test it. Now, a lot of times people are testing their vertical only with the use of a vertec. And if you're only using a vertec, then you're not really going to get a true indication on where your center of mass is, and you can't actually test it based on your arms versus non-arm influence. The only ways for us to really do that is if you're fortunate enough, of course, to have a force plate, and then you can do it in any style you want, or you can do it through a just jump mat, or a jump mat, a switch mat of this type of style, or also the myotest accelerometer that you've seen me use in the past videos. And if you do your jump styles, or test your jump styles, whether it be from pause or static, or in a just pure counter movement style, and you see the difference between the heights that you're jumping with the use of your arms versus the heights that you're jumping without the use of your arms, you can get a clear indication on how much your arms are actually helping you, and if this is something that you need to emphasize. The other way that pretty much everyone can do it is through the use of video. And if you video yourself and you see that your arms aren't necessarily going through an extended range of motion and really helping to give it a vigorous action on that concentric or overcoming action, you know that this is something you need to focus. So where is the focus need to be, or what's the true action? Well, that's going to differ for everyone. But the main thing that I look at is starting the motion with your arms up. If we're just talking a pure counter movement, you can tell that most of these videos have been about increasing your counter movement vertical. One-legged or running type jumping, one-legged jumping I should say, or running style jumps, I'll get to later. But just with this counter movement style jumping, we typically advise our athletes to start with our arms up higher because that helps us attain greater velocity as someone comes down into their counter movement. Now a big key here is you don't want your arms to go back through so great a range of motion that your chest drops forward, because then we're going to have more forward momentum when we want the momentum going upward. So we got to make sure that our arms come back far enough to be able to have a long enough range of motion to contribute to force production, but still be able to keep our chest high enough so we can create alignment between our shoulder and into our knee, and then of course down into our second toe. So we create greater lines of force. That's where it'll be on an eccentric. On the concentric, it's going to differ depending on numerous factors. First off, the actual sport demands. If you're a basketball player, you may or may not be able to get the influence of your arms as much, depending on if you're heavy on a rebounding standpoint, or if you're just trying to increase your jump performance so you can dunk. If you're going to have a ball in your hand, you're not going to be able to go through that extended range as far. It also is going to be determined by where your testing protocol is. If the only goal you have, as many vertical jump enthusiasts that are watching these videos have, is just to get higher heights, that we just want to open up the influence of our arms. If you're jumping on a jump mat, you're going to want to use both arms to really vigorously propel yourself upward and contribute to the triple extension of the hips, knees, and ankles. If you're jumping with the use of a vertec, you're obviously then going to, once your arms break the plane of your body, if you're looking at it from here, once they break the plane of your body and you start to get to the point of toe off, you're going to want to raise one arm up, your dominant arm, and your non-dominant arm is going to actually push downward so you can actually raise the center of mass of your body up higher, as well as the height of that reaching arm. So there's really no specifics. It all depends on your actual demands and what your purpose in training is. So if you find that you don't have as much arm influence as you possibly could get, and if it is accounting for 10 to 20% higher heights, this could be a huge amount. This is definitely something to work on. So what are some specifics? The biggest thing that I recommend is, like many of the other factors that we talked about, is to simply practice jumping using your arms. You can obviously start to use your arms in other movements such as plyos, whether you're doing depth jumps or just pure tuck jumps, hops, skips, bounds, anything like that that is traditionally classified as plyos. You need to really start to emphasize that arm action to be in a very good tight position that's going to help contribute to your vertical jump performance. The other way that I suggest to do it is sometimes people can get an increase or alter their biomechanics through using an overhead goal, such as a vertec or maybe a ceiling that you have in your house or in your workout facility, or anything that you can jump to touch, because that usually enforces people to emphasize that arm action and to get their bodies to a point where they're reaching up for something to always reach and touch. And it can help us emphasize that arm action. Of course, that's only going to be mostly on the takeoff or push-off phase. We need to still emphasize the downward force, especially if we're looking at counter movement jumping, where we can increase eccentric velocity by the use of our arms. I hope this helps, and I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, please feel free to ask me some questions. For Shawn Myszka, Jump Video Tip Series number 7, and Explosive Edge Athletics in Edina, Minnesota, we'll talk to you again next time.